keep rising. Born to shine. Born to shine. Grinding, grinding, grinding. Even though I'm down, I made it now. Climbing, climbing, climbing. I am a queen, I hold the crown. Flying, flying, flying. Living my dreams and holding it down. Born to shine. After everything that I've been through, said I could do it again, true. Putting in work each and every day. Now I'm a boss and I'm running things. Ain't come to play, I come to slay. Started from the bottom, now I'm changing the game. I'ma keep rising like a brand new day. And now it's born to shine, shine, born to shine, born to shine, yeah. Oh, it's a bar, it's a bar.
I, Jesse Hamilton,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of
the office of Member of the New York State Senate,
the office of member of the New York State Senate,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, Senator. Congratulations. You did a great job.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's your host, Miss Melanie here, and I am here with another episode of Brilliant and Resilient TV. We have Senator Jesse Hamilton. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you, Melanie. Always a pleasure to see you. Hope all is well with you and the family.
Yes, we're definitely good, and I just definitely want to thank you. You definitely have helped me during my transition and during my struggles and times, so I do appreciate you as a senator.
Right.
And I'm definitely proof to say that you have been working within the community to help people like us.
Oh, thank you.
So before I go into like details, how long have you been a senator?
I've been a senator for 4 years. This is the office of Borough President Eric Adams. Mm-hmm. So when he ran for borough president, he said, "I want you to work for me." And I left my job. I came to work with him full time as his attorney. He said, "I want to make history. I want to be the first person of color to be the borough president of Brooklyn." He became the borough president of Brooklyn, and then I ran the office before becoming the senator for this office. And
so that's what inspired you to become the senator?
Correct. You know, I've always been active, proactive in the community, from the school board president to vice president of the community board, my block association president. I just always had a need and a want to help people because there's so many issues that we have in our community that are not being addressed. In my office right here, our number one complaint is housing and landlord discrimination and abuse. So we had to bring in Brooklyn Housing Services to accommodate the amount of seniors who are coming into our office who are being harassed by their landlords.
Wow.
We have about 370 cases per year in this office.
Wow, and these are seniors that have been in their apartments for long periods of time, right?
Yeah, what's happening is that they're bringing their apartments, rent-stabilized apartments for a prolonged period of time, and the landlords are buying the building knowing that the rent roll can't justify paying the mortgage. And so they have to do something egregious like harass these long-term tenants to be able to meet the mortgage that the rent roll can't afford to pay off.
Got you.
Right.
So then you guys are coming in and stepping in, advocating for them and letting it not happen, right?
Yeah. You know, it happens to Joy Noel. Lived in her apartment for a long time. They filed a sewer service, misspelled her name. She told the landlord she was going to visit her family in the Caribbean. She should have told the landlord that.
That's when they came in and
evicted her, fraudulently evicted her. And she went into stay with some friends, and she felt she was being a burden. 80 years old, been living in the building 27 years. Then she went to a homeless shelter, and within 3 months from the illegal eviction, she was passed away.
Wow.
Right. So these are the things that are happening in our community, and it doesn't hit the headlines. It might hit the headlines for a couple of days, but it goes away.
That's it.
But every time we see somebody new in our neighborhood, somebody had to leave. And the question is, did they leave willingly or were they forced out?
Right.
A lot of times people are forced out. A lot of times landlords are doing things to accelerate making the apartment non-rent stabilized anymore by keep increasing the rent. With the vacancy bonus, 18%, 20%, 18% to becomes more than $2,700 is off the rent regulations payroll, and that's it. We're losing a lot of apartments that way.
Wow. That's sad. So pretty much, is there any way to stop that from happening?
Well, the Democrats had the majority now in the New York State Senate. So vacancy decontrol, preferential rent, and also the vacancy decontrol, preferential rent, and as far as that's concerned, those are the things that should be looked at. As far as, and then the cap of the 2,700 for apartment to be deregulated. So deregulation, the vacancy decontrol, and then also the vacancy bonus rather, and also the preferential rent are the three issues that should be addressed in this Senate session coming up in January.
Wow. So, really quick, are you from Brooklyn originally? Where are you from?
Boogie Down Bronx.
You're from the Bronx?
I'm from
and
the
you're
Bronx.
working in Brooklyn. That's odd.
Yeah, I'm from the Bronx. Actually, I'm from the South Bronx, Morehouses.
What?
Yeah, 149th Street and Jackson Avenue.
The hub.
The hub.
Over
and
there.
It made me who I am today. It showed me, where I didn't want to go.
Okay.
And my mother always expressed education. Went to Cardinal Hayes High School. She had to sacrifice, work 2 jobs. Yeah. And I saw my mother struggle. I saw her struggle, and I said, I can't let this woman down.
Right.
I went on to Ithaca College.
Okay.
And then I graduated from there with a BS in finance. I went on to get my MBA. I graduated from my MBA on a Friday. I started law school on Monday. And
Brilliant.
So,
That's nice.
And I'm an attorney. And I went down to the Million Man March. I went to give back something. Mm-hmm. And I was the president of the Black Law Students at Seton Hall Law School.
Okay.
And I went to Boca Raton, and my uncle was down there visiting his son, my cousin. And he said, come to Brooklyn. Your aunt and I are there. We're alone. We have a brownstone. Come stay with us. And I, stayed with them, a couple of days, and then I moved into their brownstone. It took me an hour and 15 minutes to get from Queens to my job. It took me 15 minutes from Brooklyn to get to downtown Brooklyn. So it was a no-brainer.
It was a no-brainer.
Right.
It made sense. Okay, so you did that. You finished law school, and how did you end up being the senator of New York? Give us the process for any children that may be watching that may want to follow your footsteps one day. How did you get here?
It's community activism. I became the president of the school board on District 17.
Okay.
We had 24 schools, 24,000 students. We still had coal-burning furnaces in the schools. We had a high rate of students having asthma, so we got rid of the coal-burning furnaces. Then with Major Owens, we worked on the E-rate to get all the schools wired for internet. We had teleconferencing, young kids from Brooklyn who are Haitian, talking to kids in Haiti. Just trying to be innovative and teaching our kids, not doing the same thing over and over again. We had GED classes for the parents. Okay. We had award ceremonies, or not just for the kids who were doing well, because after a while, I started seeing the same kids and the same parents at all the award ceremonies. So we started having award ceremonies for the children who were borderline.
Okay.
To give them a boost, confidence, boost their self-esteem, and lo and behold, we had a packed house, standing room only. Because this is the first time these kids were getting awards.
Right.
And their parents just felt so delighted.
They want to come.
And proud. They wanted to come. Not only the parents, the cousins, the uncles, the extended family.
Wow.
So proud of you.
So proud of you. Something.
The child is invigorated. The parents are invigorated. And so we realized that was the key. And in the beginning, they used to come in and give the awards and they would leave.
Okay.
We started giving the awards near the end to tell the parents of the programs we have, not only for the children, but for the parents.
Okay.
And that's something we did. So, technology has always been something I've been focused on. That's what we need.
Okay.
Because we do hackathons now. We have training now for young kids so they can get certified in coding.
Oh, nice.
You can make $80,000 a year coding with a high school diploma.
Right.
So why aren't we teaching that in the schools? Now I have Park Slope, Prospect Heights in Sunset Park, but Brownsville, East New York, Flatbush, and Crown Heights. But in more affluent neighborhoods, the parents pay for the coding programs.
Oh.
But in our schools, we don't have enough computer technology teachers to teach the course. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to pay me as a teacher $60,000 or $50,000 to teach computer technology, and I can make $80,000 with a high school diploma without a college degree, you're going to have a shortage.
Right.
So there's a disconnect right now between technology being taught in schools and the workplace environment. And so we have Amazon coming into Queens, Long Island City, in Queens, a $3 billion tax break and no programs that are being, set up to teach the kids in the neighborhoods that are challenged how to get these jobs.
Right.
So it's just going to further increase gentrification. It's going to increase homelessness.
Yes.
And it's going to increase displacement because the pool is here for the workforce, but the workforce pool don't look like us.
Mm-mm.
So that's what we need to work on, is making sure that we have to get people who can teach computer technology without college degrees or without having a degree in teaching into the schools, or the schools where, in Brownsville, where when I started, we only had only 13% of some kids reading at grade level. That's criminal.
That's definitely hurting the future. Now, when you say just computers, programming, because I have a PowerPoint. I'm going to send you my PowerPoint because I came up with I definitely have a soft spot for kids, and I just feel like there's not enough enlightenment for the children to teach them. Not everybody's going to be the doctor. Not everybody's going to be the scientist, the lawyer. So just to teach them different ways that they can be successful in life without having to say, okay, I wasn't good at math or I wasn't good at English, so what am I going to do?
Right.
So, I definitely came up with something I'll share with you later, but it's just to show, to bring more people into the community to give their time and do workshops.
Right.
That, like if they're just watching you right now, how do I be a senator? How can I get there? How can I get that far? Some of them don't know, and they don't aspire to be anything aside from, okay, I should be a ball player, I should be a doctor, I should be a lawyer, It's like they can't see past that, and the creative ones are slipping through the cracks because they have so much creativity, but academically they are challenged. So I definitely appreciate that you did that. So now bringing you back into here, so you started off with the community in the schools.
I did the school board. Then I became the Democratic district leader.
Okay.
As a Democratic district
How
leader,
did you do that?
you have to run for office.
Okay.
It's a position that is not widely known about. It's like, inside politics type of position. And you usually have a political club, and the district leader, you have a male and female. And they usually are solely contained within the assembly district. So you have the assembly person, and you have two district leaders, the male and female. And ideally, those two district leaders work with the assemblymen in that assembly district, and also city council people, state senators, the mayor, anybody in that political realm. And they usually have a political club, and then they hire the people who work at the Board of Elections to work during the election time.
Yes.
So anytime you go into a polling site, mostly all of the poll workers are hired by the district leaders. Now you have a Democratic male and female district leader. You also have a Republican male and female district leader.
Okay.
And so those people who work in polling sites are basically part of your club. Then you have other people who are less politically active in the community who want to do better, become part of your club. And that's usually the foundation you have to get politically connected. And then you might go to the Bronx and meet other district leaders and elected officials. When I was a district leader, I knew, everybody, from Mayor de Blasio, Attorney General Tish James, on a first name basis, telephone number, and things of that nature. And so because everybody has to rise up through the ranks,
Right.
Tish James was part of VITA. You have Mayor de Blasio. He came from a political club in Park Slope. So everybody had to start somewhere within the political club and then run. And so that's how we all know each other, because we all started out, on the ground level.
Right, and you kind of just all grew up together.
Correct.
Yes. So now, during your 4 years, what would you say, of the 4 years of being senator, what would you say were your greatest achievements or highlights for you?
The campus, which is in Brownsville, Crown Heights, and Flatbush, where we're teaching kids computer technology. We have a wellness center with psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers who are culturally sensitive. You can't have someone from Omaha who's a psychiatrist coming to Brooklyn giving psychiatric advice to a kid who's growing up in Brownsville, NYCHA housing.
Right, you
They
can't.
just don't it's just two different universes.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges.
It's apples and oranges, and then we have a workforce development. We got about 365 people jobs, and then we also have anti-gang violence, which is a big issue. So those are things that we're looking at. We got that done. That was something that we were proud of. The borough presidents gave us $500,000. I gave about $2 million to the program, and we bought 3D printers. We have more 3D printers in my district than any other place in the state, because technology is the key for our children.
Yes.
We brought in digital girls. to teach computer technology. We brought in Blue 1647 from Chicago with a Google grant to teach technology. So we were more emphasizing teaching our kids technology or just exposing them to that.
Right.
Taking them to the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. So that was something I was proud of, to see the math and reading scores go up. And everybody started, buying into it. We had 68 community-based organizations working with us.
Nice.
So we integrated all the community-based organizations. Prior to that, every CBO was operating independently. And then once we brought everybody together, we started to see a difference in the attitudes, a difference in the parents' commitment, a difference in the teachers' commitment, because everybody wants to be part of a winning team. Engagements.
Yes.
And so I don't know why no one even thought about that before, but being always on the ground with the school board, I'm like, we have all these community-based organizations getting all this money. Why aren't they integrated?
Right.
Why aren't they working together? So that happens, but a lot of times the smaller ones are afraid that the larger ones will take them over. And we told them, look, we're going to make sure you get your funding, and it will stay that way. No one's going to take your funding away.
Right.
And someone has to reassure them that it's not just you by yourself saying, this is mine, I have to hold on to my funding source, I don't want to share any ideas with anybody, they might take that away from me. So once they get that level of understanding, knowing that nothing will happen to them and their program will prosper and grow, then it started to work out. The next best thing we got done was raise the age. I was at the ranker for mental health. And we had an award ceremony. And, I was talking to people, and this is before Charlene McCrae came up with the healthcare program that she had with the New York, with the healthcare as far as, mental illness should not be looked at as being a stigma.
Right.
And so what we did was we had, I realized, they said, do you know which facility has more severely mentally ill people than all the others combined in New York State? I was like, Bellevue.
Right.
They were like, no. I was like, Creedmoor? And Creedmoor's closed. And I went on to 3 other different places, and then finally they said Rikers Island. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Rikers Island has more severely mentally ill people than all their facilities combined in New York State. And we were sending 16 and 17-year-olds into that torturous environment, coming out mentally scarred, to the point where everybody heard about Khalif Browder, but there are thousands of others, Khalif Browders, that stories weren't told.
Right.
With the horrors they saw at 16 and 17. And our incarceration of young Black and Latino kids is worse than some third world countries. Khalif Browder spent 2 years in solitary confinement out of 3 for allegedly stealing a backpack.
Wow.
No affluent young kid would have ever went to jail for being accused of stealing a backpack. Never indicted, never convicted. And so part of my what I did as my tenure in the Senate was to fight for ending that cycle. So no more 16 and 17-year-olds being incarcerated with adults.
They got to be 18.
They got to be 18 to be incarcerated adults. And they say they want to close down Rikers, but closing down Rikers is not going to stop people going there if you have a cash bail system. You shouldn't have people in Rikers Island who can't post bail of $2,000 who stay in jail for a year.
Just because they can't afford it.
They can't afford it. It's a crime of poverty.
Right.
So if you had a job, you lost your job.
Right.
If you had an apartment, you lost your apartment. Now let's say if you had a family. Now they're homeless. And you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but if you can't post that bail of $2,000, somebody be like
you lose everything regardless whether you're innocent or not.
But and the so-called progressives, they might, I don't see them fighting to end this, because at the end of the day, the progressives, don't want to see us walking in their neighborhoods because they'll call the police on you to harass you, intimidate you, to say don't walk through here anymore.
Exactly.
And so hopefully in this next session they'll get rid of cash bail, because there's too many young people of color in jail, and a lot of times they plead out.
Just because they're poor.
They say, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be in this crazy environment.
Send me upstate. That's it.
I'll take the plea. Give me time served.
Time served.
But then they come out and they apply for a job. They go.
They can't now.
So the double-edged sword. If you don't have the money to pay to pay the bill, you got to stay there you lose your job. And if you take a plea, even though you're innocent,
your record is tarnished.
It's tarnished.
And for at least 10 years, you can't live in certain areas, you can't work certain jobs. It's a lose-lose situation.
And a classic example of that is the Central Park Five, who are innocent, didn't rape this woman, but because she came from the affluent part of town, they had to put somebody up as a scapegoat, and these boys were railroaded.
Yeah.
And then they said you can't get probation unless you admit to the sexual assault.
Right.
And then once you admitted to the sexual assault, even though you were released, you still were on the docket. Rather, you had to still sign up
Sex offenders
as a
list.
sex offenders list.
Oh my gosh. That's
And then you had to go to sex offender classes and say and recant what you did, but you didn't do it.
But, yeah.
And then you got to admit to something you didn't do. So what we see is a criminal justice system failing poor people.
Right.
You know, and not because they're criminals, because they're poor, and it's a system that people feed off of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, police officers, prisons, court officers, judges, ACS, you know, social workers. It's
a horrible situation. I definitely know. Now, I know that I was super excited when I saw that you were passing a bill for.
Right.
The bill that you were working on passing was to make it a crime to call police on people of color falsely, right?
Correct.
Now, just to give our viewers an understanding about passing a bill, what does it entail of getting a bill passed, and what would you need from the community to get that bill passed?
It's actually, Melanie, a simple process.
Yeah?
If you're an elected official, usually you have someone in your office who's like partially a bill drafter, and you put it in simple English, right? And then or you have a legislative director in your office. And then your legislative director takes it to a bill drafter, and they take your common, just plain English, and draft it into legislation to make sure that it doesn't contradict any other laws that are already on the book, and then they introduce it, and then you get a same as, as far as a bill sent to the state assembly. Mm-hmm. So you need a Senate sponsor and you need an assembly sponsor. And then it goes to committee. The committee votes on it, and then it goes to the full body in both houses. Once it goes to the full body in both houses and is voted on, and then it goes to the governor's office to sign off on it.
And yours did not pass?
Mine was not introduced. I introduced it, but it wasn't, because the session in Albany is from January to June.
So it didn't get there in time.
So there's no bills that are introduced after June. You can introduce it, but it won't go before in your house. It won't go to the Senate or the Assembly because the session doesn't start again until January. In this bill, I introduced it because I was handing out literature that was anti-Trump and pro-immigration, and this woman, came up to me and goes, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, it's my flyer." She goes, "Well, why are you anti-American?" I'm not anti-American. "Yes, you are." I said, "How am I anti-American?" She goes, "Well, your flyer is anti-Trump." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Because he's dividing the country.
Right.
He's polarizing our country. He's not making it better." Mm-hmm. She goes, "Well, no, you're the one who's polarizing people by putting out this flyer."
Oh, wow.
She goes, "What do you think about immigrants?" I said, "Well, this country was built on immigrants.
Yeah.
Immigrants built this country." Mm-hmm. And my grandmother, came from Barbados, so I'm a product of immigrants who come to this country. And I'm an attorney, and, I'm living a good lifestyle, and I'm raising my family here.
Yeah, successfully.
Successfully. And she said to me, "I don't like what you're doing. Immigrants are a burden in our society, on our healthcare system, on our housing system, and they're criminals."
Wow.
And I said, "Wow, really?" And so I said, "Okay, man, have a good day." She goes, "No, I want to talk to you." I talked to her for another 5 minutes. I said, "Okay, man, I have to talk to other people." She came back 10 minutes later. She goes, "If we don't leave, I'm going to call the police on you." I'm like, "For what?" I said, "I have a right for freedom of speech."
Right.
She goes, "No, you don't. You don't have that right here in this country because you're being un-American." I'm like, "All right."
So to be an American, you got to be in agreement with what the president is doing just because he's the president?
I guess so. I'm sure if we had Obama as a president, she'd probably have a different mindset about that.
Of course.
If I was anti-Obama, she'd probably go along
Thumbs
with that.
up. Right.
Thumbs up. And when she called the police on 911, I just stood there,
Flabbergasted.
I was stunned. I'm like,
I don't even know who I am.
A state senator, an attorney, a father, you know,
A husband.
you know, and I'm being, you know, tormented, you know, and humiliated by this woman, you know, who I don't even know. But basically, a lot had to do with the anti-Trump, and a lot had to do with me being a person of color.
Right.
Something that she felt that I have no rights that she had to respect. You know, and what was interesting, she was an immigrant from Europe herself.
Russian or something.
You know, something like that. You know, so when she called the police, I was thinking to myself, if I was the average black man out here,
Right.
and she called the police, and the police were to come, and if she were to fabricate and said that I hit her or pushed
It
her,
would be her word
or
against
assaulted
yours.
her, it'd be my word against hers, right? The police will arrest me.
Of course.
She would not be arrested, and I would have to go through the system.
Because you would be guilty until proven
I'll
innocent.
be guilty until proven innocent. And this happens time and time again. You know, they call the police on a young girl at Princeton, you know, not doing anything. A young lady at Smith College for not doing anything. Elected official knocking on doors, not doing anything. So anytime people call, you know, so you shouldn't call police on someone that you are fearful of. If they're not doing anything wrong. They're just
Right.
minding their own business.
Right.
And people use this to intimidate and humiliate and interrogate.
Right.
And it's happening more often in gentrified neighborhoods where they're moving in and they're seeing our young boys and girls hanging out and they get a little, you know, afraid. And they say, well, I don't want them near my $1 million condo,
Right.
so I'm going to say they're doing something and tell the police to shoot them off.
Exactly.
You know, and even when I was knocking on doors, I had the same type of, you know, response. So the 911 bill is designed to guard against bias and hatred, you know, and stupidity, and people who are not culturally sensitive. Because if I was a young man and I called the police on a woman who comes from, let's say, an affluent neighborhood, and I said this woman assaulted me, the police would look at me and go, well, how did she assault you?
Correct.
Well, you hurt. You know, do you want to come down to the station and make a statement? They would do everything in their power
Except arrest that person.
to dissuade me from doing what I'm doing. But when the shoe's on the other foot, it doesn't work that way. So we still have a two-tier system of justice in this country that has not gone away. Because I see it happen all the time. But luckily I go to precinct council meetings, so I know the commanders, I know the police officers. So when the police officers had come to the scene, they're looking at her and looking at me like,
Really?
really, lady? You called us for this? You called us on the senator handing out
Right.
campaign literature?
Oh my God.
You know, it makes no sense, but these are the times that we're living in.
Right.
These are the times that we're living in, and it's unfortunate. And also, we had another bill, introduced it, on turnstile evasion. You could be, you know, the majority of the kids, you know, who are getting arrested, you know, like 10,000 every year, 12,000 every year, kids getting arrested for turnstile evasion. And they're not paying the $275. A lot of them going to school, they get stopped.
Right.
The trend has stopped a little bit somewhat, but if you don't pay that $275, the fine is $175.
Oh wow.
Now, if you don't pay the $175, you get an outstanding warrant, right? Which is now turned into a misdemeanor on your record. And now young kids don't realize that this turnstile evasion is something that can follow you for the rest of your life. I had a woman today I met, she said she got caught with the turnstile like when she was 18. She went for a job at 38, and it still showed up.
Yes.
So you could be applying for jobs and not realizing that this $200,075 is following you. So that, to me, is a Jim Crow law. Same thing with kids who are poor, you know, don't have the money, need to get somewhere.
Right.
And they're getting a criminal record for that. You know, in certain neighborhoods, if the kid just asks to get let in, they get let in. In our neighborhoods, no, you can't get in, walk or whatever. So, and what happens is when you get caught with that outstanding warrant, where do they send you?
Rikers Island.
Which has more severely mentally ill people than all the other facilities combined, and we're sending our kids there for $2.75.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that pass, that bill?
No, they fought it, you know, because people make money off our misery.
Right.
People think that for some reason that people want all children to do well,
No.
and some people have a biased view on which children should do well and which children should not do well. And so next year we're going to be celebrating 400 years from the first slaves coming to America.
Wow.
And the things that nothing has really changed that much.
No.
And people are upset with Trump, not because of what he's saying, it's because he's saying what they're saying behind closed doors.
Because it's been happening,
It's
but
been
they
happening.
haven't said it publicly. Trump just don't care.
He don't care.
Well,
You
this
know.
is what it is, and that's it. He's just going to speak it. He don't care what we think about it.
No. So the progressives will try to, soothe it, filter it, and make it seem nice. But they'll talk one way, but their actions speak another.
Right.
You can't have schools where you have classrooms designated for affluent people, who get more resources. And so what Trump is doing, a lot of people are getting activated, but no one is marching from affluent neighborhoods for affordable housing. If anything, people in affluent neighborhoods are fighting to keep out homeless shelters. So if you're so progressive and you want to embrace everybody and pull everybody together, how come there ain't any shelters in Brooklyn Heights? How come there ain't any shelters in Park Slope? How aren't there any shelters in the more affluent neighborhoods?
Right.
They have to, pull their weight. And but it doesn't mean like if you look at a homeless shelter, people want to be doing drugs or whatever.
That's the stigma.
It's a stigma. But the way the system is set up, they put a disproportionate amount in poor neighborhoods rather than spreading them out amongst all neighborhoods. Because if a person sees young kids going to school and doing well, that motivates them to do better.
Right.
But if you're in a neighborhood where everybody's doing drugs and doing bad, then there's really no motivation.
Hope.
There's no hope. You feel like you're hopeless. But if you're in an environment where people are doing well and you're a small portion of that neighborhood, you kind of blend in.
And it'll have a more positive influence
It might have a
on
more
you.
positive impact. So what we're seeing is that the more affluent neighborhoods don't want social service programs. They don't want anything. And so to me, that's not fair.
No.
But these are supposed to be the progressive people, but they're only progressive when it comes to getting things from us.
Right.
But when it's for them to have programs where we're at, people look like me and you, come into their neighborhoods, it's like no. So that's what's happening right now, and that's something we have to wake up on. They say they want to legalize marijuana, but how can you legalize it? You have people in jail for selling it.
Right.
Let's have the conversation of, before we legalize it, let's come up with a plan to let these young men who had nonviolent felonies out of jail, expunge their records, and get them a job in some of these dispensaries.
Right.
Now, there's no dispensary that's going to be selling marijuana that's minority controlled.
No.
So if you're a minority, you go to jail for selling marijuana, and if you're a minority, you can't sell it legally because there's no minority-owned dispensaries in New York State.
Why?
Because of the process. It's limited.
It's a long...
It's like a monopoly almost.
Okay.
And if that goes through with legalized marijuana, those few dispensaries become multimillionaires. And to me, to say you're going to take that money and put it for mass transit when we have the highest homeless population is ridiculous. If you ask anybody, would you want to have better trains or a place to live?
A place to live.
A place to live. But
So who's the one making the decision on where the money's going, where it's being allocated from making the millions on marijuana becoming legal?
The legislature. So what we have now is the news media. The news media drives the narrative. It's sort of like when President Bush kept saying weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass. Even though it wasn't true, if the media keeps playing it over and over and over again, they keep saying it over. People just tend to think, oh, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
Go get him.
Right.
But in reality, it's propaganda. We have the best propaganda news media in the world. To change public opinion. Now, the average person is not. They're saying mass transit. So what do they do? They start doing things on purpose to slow things down, to aggravate you, to make you feel frustrated, to make you go, you know what? Then they say we're going to raise the fear. Now listen, the fear is going up the same time as the marijuana is going to be introduced. So it's a way of pushing you to say,
yes, we need help with the MTA.
No. Let's have an audit. They don't even know what's really wrong with it.
Right.
You just can't throw money into something that doesn't work.
That's true.
It's like you just keep throwing money. It doesn't work. So I'm saying let's have transparency. Let's have an audit. Because if you go see management, MTA, they're all from the burbs. They're all from affluent neighborhoods. You don't have the rank and file having a step-up plan. So if you work on the bus for 10 years, then you become part of management. and you move up through the ranks. You go back to school, do whatever, to go into the top management MTA. That's not happening. Rank and file is not getting transitioning up into management. You have people from the outside who don't know the system coming in, and that's part of the problem. If you had never driven a bus or driven a train, worked on the platform, worked in the toll booth, how do you can't? It's not like checking dots.
Right.
You have to understand how things actually work.
You have to experience it.
You have to experience
to be able to understand
and
it.
know the human factor of what's going on. Maybe someone who worked on the tracks, and knowing the hazards working on the track, the mindset of people working on the tracks. What's the best time to do the tracks? So we don't have it's people who on the ground experience being promoted into the higher rank. So for me, I'd rather see the money from the sale of marijuana before you even have to talk about taxes from the sale of marijuana. Talk about the kids who are in jail now with felonies for selling marijuana.
That's one of my major questions right now is how do we know, or do you know, or how can people find out if once it becomes legal, the people that have been imprisoned for when it was illegal, someone said because it was illegal at the time that they committed the crime that they would not get their records expunged. Right. Is that fair?
It's not fair. It's not fair.
How do you stop it? How do you make it? How can they do that?
And there's a lot of bright people who are being incarcerated. I mean, to be a drug dealer is not an easy task.
Oh, you got to be a very smart, brilliant person to be a drug dealer. Yeah.
You have to worry about other people trying to rob you. You have to worry about people who work for you trying to short you your money.
And your investment, making sure you're getting mony back on it.
And then you have to make sure that the people who you're buying it from, you have to pay them their money back, or they're going to come after you. They have to worry about the police coming after you and taking money from you. And if you do get caught, paying for a lawyer. So there's a lot of things in the system that is set up for our young men and boys to fail. But had they had the right proper education and proper internships and being exposed to the right things, I mean, people don't wake up saying, "I want to sell drugs."
No,
Melanie.
That was just the easiest way out.
Right. And we glamorize, hip hop, drug dealers. We don't glamorize, a bus driver. We don't glamorize the owner of the bodega. We don't, glamorize the guy who works for sanitation. These are good jobs, and we definitely don't glamorize, computer technology or science. Oh, you're a geek, you're a nerd, you're not in social engineering. But all those geeks and nerds got good homes now. Successful.
Good families. Good head on their shoulders.
Good head on their shoulder.
I tell my daughter all the time, being a nerd is cool to me. I'm a smart person.
Right.
And I have transitioned from the street life to corporate America and then, now in the industry. And it takes you got to have brains. You got to be smart to be able to apply, like you said, so many different aspects of whether it's in the street or anywhere else. You got to be smart. But it's just very sad that I think you're right. The money should be allocated to education, bettering the children's ability to see further than the traditional jobs.
Right.
And then also expunging these people and taking them out of prison. And like you said, maybe a conditional release, like, okay, you were expunging these charges, you're coming out, and, you can go into the field that you were in successfully.
Right.
But it was illegal then, now it's legal. Go make your money.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, you just can't release them without having some housing for them.
Yes.
So let's take some of this money that was from the taxation of marijuana to help transition those people who are in jail for selling it.
Right.
But since they were selling, they know more about it than the average person.
Right.
So let them become get jobs. Certified, get a job to work in these dispensaries. They should be given first priority because they know the business.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Because these people, are people from certain communities that are not given opportunities. And now we have people who have money for these dispensaries, who have people to push this agenda. You have to have something that people can look at and say, oh, maybe it's a good idea. But for the epidemic in the suburbs, opiate epidemic, but for now that the people who are dying are not people of color from the urban areas, it's a change of mind now in America that we don't really have a war on drugs anymore. When it was black and brown people, it was a war on drugs. Now it's like we need to help these kids.
Oh, because they see it's a problem. It's
This is the
not a
problem
war on
now
drugs.
within the larger community. You know, and so now they say, well, let's make marijuana legal because, you know, they don't want their kids going to jail for it.
Of course.
And they don't want their kids now to get the records.
Yes.
You know, and in certain areas of the state, they don't even arrest kids for marijuana.
I know.
Because the kids, they can go to the park, whatever. So kids don't even get arrested for marijuana. But in the city, you know, our kids get arrested, it's a wrap. You smoke a joint and get caught.
Join and that's it.
And that's it. You get arrested, they go through your pockets, whatever, and you go in through the system.
Right. So are they not, because I saw somebody told me that they were inviting people to Brooklyn, maybe it's false or not, to expunge marijuana charges. So they're not expunging marijuana charges right now, anywhere in New York State?
In some cases they are for low amounts. I believe, like they had, you know, like if you had a warrant, and it was if it was like over 7-8 years, it was a statute of limitations that it was over a certain amount of time, and you didn't get in trouble, they would expunge it. So it was like a part of a wider catchment of saying, you know, if you had a record, if you had a warrant for a misdemeanor or something that was nonviolent, and you hadn't gotten in trouble for a prolonged period of time, then they would, you know, expunge your record and do it that way to give you a running start to do well. Because you know, I think the society's realizing now, because of the wider epidemic in the mainstream community, that now they're not just doing it for us now; they're just doing it so that their children won't get the adverse effects that people of color have been having for decades.
Right. Oh, that's very unfortunate. Is it going to be legalized anytime soon?
I think it will be legalized. I think the way we're seeing the media and the narrative on how you know the problems with the MTA, how it's crumbling. You know, we're going to raise the fares because we don't have the funding for it.
Right.
They're going to threaten us with our taxes being raised, and so people are like say, well, if they can keep the fares, you know, lower the fares and fix it up, then I'm for it.
So they're pretty much selling the legalization of marijuana to the people by saying it's going to help us with the MTA system, but nobody's mentioning the homelessness.
No. And if we go back, Melanie, to legalizing of gambling. At one point, it was illegal to gamble.
Right.
And you had the number runners. And number runners were like in the black community.
I know. Go play my numbers for $1.
Yeah, go play my number for $1.
Daytime numbers. Daytime numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, and people were going to jail for doing numbers, Melanie. And it was a lucrative business. It was so lucrative that the state said we need to do the same thing.
Legally. So
Legally.
they came out with the lottery.
So they came out with the lottery, but what was the reason why people said let's go for gambling in the state? Because a portion of the tax money was supposed to go to improve the educational system.
And it didn't.
And it didn't.
Obviously, because it hasn't
didn't.
improved.
So no one is saying, well, when we said we're going to legalize gambling, the money was a portion of that money is supposed to go to improving the schools that weren't doing well. That was like 15, 20 years ago. The schools in minority neighborhoods are still not doing well. And no one is tracking the money.
Who holds these people accountable?
Nobody. No one holds people accountable. Because it's a cash cow. People are getting paid a lot of money to teach. You know, you got principals, you got, you know, after school programs, you got vendors selling food, vendors selling books. You know, everybody's getting paid, but the quality of the educational system hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed.
The same way that they're doing the same thing they did for legalizing gambling now for legalizing marijuana, to say the MTA is going to be fixed up, and 10 years from now,
it's not going to be fixed up.
It's not going to be fixed up, and they're going to come up with another story for something else.
Right. That's terrible. I know it's a fact because my daughter's in high school, and the other day she was, you know, we'd go over the work, and you know, not to say nothing against history. I love history, and you know, at the time they were talking about the Boston Tea Party or something like that, and I'm just like, well, I remember learning this exact lesson the exact same way, and I'm 40 years old. My daughter's 14.
Okay.
So I'm just like, I understand why you need to know history, but there's nothing else that you're learning in school that is relevant to what we're living in 2018 that's going to help you in the future once you finish school. I didn't learn nothing that I do now from school.
No.
I learned it on my own after school, you know, and I think that definitely a problem. They need to teach children more conducive what do you call that, curriculums.
Right.
And bring workshops and just bring different things. And for everyone to be, you know, benefiting, and except for the children, it's just like horrible.
I had a bill that I passed in the Senate, Republican control Senate, 2 years in a row, to have Black History taught year round. Not just one day a week.
Why just, what, one day?
And that's not just 1 month, rather. And it got fought, you know, by, you know, educational organizations, because they don't want our children to see positive images of themselves. They don't want to say that.
Right.
There should be a progressive movement to say, well, these kids are not learning well. We can't keep teaching doing the same thing over and over again.
Something else got to give.
Something got to give. Like Einstein said, if you do something over and over again,
Insane.
and the same thing over and over again, and expect a different result, that's insanity. So that's why we're trying to change the things that I was doing, you know, in the Senate. But it passed 2 years. It didn't come out committee, and it's amazing how educators don't want to include history of people of color throughout the diaspora in their textbooks.
No.
We learn about every other culture outside of even America, you know. And the only thing we learn about in our history books about people of color is slavery,
Right.
Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, and Frederick Douglass. All about civil rights, not about inventors, not about the doctors, not about engineers, not about successful business people. You don't get any of that.
No.
You know, you just, you know, and so when you sit with other kids in the classroom, you see all these other kids, you know, they see their people, you know, like Christopher Columbus. What did he just, he didn't discover Jack.
Right.
He did everything. He was a Mr. Genocide.
Right.
But we have to look at Christopher Columbus as being this upstanding person.
Great person, right.
And look at George Washington, you know, Alexander Hamilton as being upstanding people. These were slave owners.
Right.
You know, and you only talk about one side. Okay, so let's say he did good, but at the same time he was a slave owner.
Right.
You know, so he wasn't fighting for liberty and justice for all. He was fighting to enhance his political and personal wealth. You know, let's keep it real. He wasn't fighting for, you know, he wasn't fighting for people who look like me and you.
No.
You know, and many things was sneaking into the shed at night. I'm sorry.
I know it. Yes, and that's why we have, you know, such a major mixed race.
Mixed race,
Mixed race
right.
taking over. But real quick before we wrap it up, you had mentioned a couple of things about Trump here. What do you feel about the state of the nation right now, and with that our leader being our leader, and how do you feel like, what direction are we heading in?
I think, you know, Trump, people talk about Trump, but Trump he wasn't a president. There's other presidents who deported more people than Trump.
Okay.
Okay. And I say Trump didn't create the housing crisis in New York City.
Okay.
Trump didn't create the educational problem we have in New York City. Trump didn't create police brutality that we have in New York City.
Okay.
Trump hasn't created the non-functioning MTA. So moving forward, we may have issues with Trump, but there are a lot of issues that we have and still have before Trump got into office. So, you know, people get fixated on Trump, but there are issues that we've had for decades before Trump really even got into office.
Right.
You know, Trump didn't cause this homeless crisis. This has been something that's been ongoing. To me, it started with the Bloomberg administration when he was taking homes. He took the tax lien process and accelerated it. And we're having problems now with the city taking property from people of color who own their homes. You might have like an outstanding tax burden of $10,000 when the home is worth $1 million.
Wow.
That makes no sense. So we have a lot of things that are affecting the community of color. And I'm saying we should be focusing on Trump, but really focusing on the real issues: education, homelessness, you know, jobs for our children. Our children can't afford to live in the neighborhoods they grew up in.
No.
You know, and we have these multi-million-dollar companies coming into Brooklyn now. Brooklyn is the hottest place to be at. We were duped with the Barclays Center. They said, you know, we're going to build the Barclays Center, we're going to have affordable housing, and now there's really no affordable housing. So time and time again, we're promised things that never come to fruition. They never happen. And so the same thing with the legalizing of gambling, with the lottery, for better schools. Didn't happen. Now they're going to say we want to legalize marijuana for the MTA. It's going to get better. It's not going to happen. So we have to just look at our history and look at what happened in the past. I mean, not make the same mistake again in the future, but they make it so palatable with the narrative that, the fares are going up, crime is going up, more fear tactics, and people focus on fear rather than kind of like distort your thinking process.
Right.
It's like, sort of like when back in the day when they go, well, we got to increase the sentencing for these criminals, and they saw these young kids of color, so they won't have to harm you and your family. And they go, yeah. Let's raise the criminal, the crime for the sentencing rather for if you look at somebody wrong, now you get 2 or 3 years in jail, and so that's the same thing that's happening now with the MTA, and we have to be more astute in saying why are they want to legalize marijuana now when 10 years ago it was a war against drugs. The only difference between 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is that now the people who are getting involved in drugs and who are dying and selling it more because the economy is tanking are people in the mainstream.
Right.
And so now, so they wanted to lessen the criminal sentencing for them, but at the same time keep those who've been in jail for selling marijuana with nonviolent felonies for selling marijuana. Now they're not even discussing what to do with these kids, giving them jobs and getting them out. If you're going to legalize it, then you have to make reparations or make conditions for those people who've been, incarcerated for something and now you're going to legalize.
Right.
Only because, the economy's not doing well. People want to, they want to find another way to make money. That's all it is. When the economy's not, they want to find another way to make money. And the same people who have been controlling the system are going to benefit it. And the same people who haven't been benefiting are going to still be in that same holding pattern.
So it's not looking good.
No.
Pray for our people. That's pretty much it. When they legalized gambling, did they do that with the people who had gambling charges? Do you know?
I'm not sure about that, but I know the way the narrative on selling it to the people was that we need to improve our schools.
Right.
Now, every parent wants to have an improved school.
Right.
And so that's when you hit that nerve, who's going to say no to it? They say, well, we need to raise more money, but they're not saying, well, you're raising the money, but on whose back? It's not like it's an investment. Someone has to lose their money for you to get this money. It wasn't like someone was producing a product that people were getting paid. They say we're gonna open up a technology hub, and we're gonna put money into it to get jobs, and the portion of that money that's earned, we're gonna put to education. No, you're talking about people spending their hard-earned money, and usually it's people who don't have the money, who want to play something. It's like you're praying someone.
It's a fix.
It's like a fix.
Praying, you're hoping. I want to win. I need this money.
I want the money.
I'm not gonna get it off this paycheck in this job this week, but I need more than that. Let me get it in the lotto. Yeah. And
if you go to any office building, in any part of the USA, you see people outside smoking their cigarette and scratching. Scratching. Everybody's scratching because they can't make ends meet.
They can't.
And rather than saying I'm going to open up a business, I'm going to invest a certain way, no one told them, how to invest your money, properly to get a return on your investment.
Yeah.
Their way of investing their money is putting money into scratch off or lotto, and they said a person is more likely to get hit by lightning than to win lotto. And they still believe in that. That's why I don't play. I don't play it either. I don't get hit by lightning. Me either. All right, Melanie. But I definitely agree with you. And more people need to start businesses. I think if us minorities were more knowledgeable in being entrepreneurs and finding our niche in the world and finding ways that we can make a difference and make a profit also. Right. That definitely is something that could better our chances. Right now it's not looking good. No, I was a banking chair for New York State, and it's discrimination in access to capital. So if you're a person of color, you have to take out a loan on your house or max out your credit cards. And so you're starting off, with a deficit before you really start off. Right. And you have online lending, A lot of it is great, but some of it's not great. You know, when you have 25, 29% interest rates, and they take the money right out your banking account. It's not like you write a check. So that's something that the city and state is working on with the 30% minority set-asides, but then some people are fighting back against that now. You know, they say, how can you have a 30% minority set-aside in the area? It was only 4 or 5% people of color. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But access to capital, Melanie, is a major issue for minority businesses to get started. And then the second problem is that the ones who are doing well don't report all their income.
True.
To
taxes.
The taxes. But if you can do it in such a way, you get an accountant, they can show you how to write off certain expenses and everything. Yeah. You know, but you just got to show what you gross.
Yeah.
So we have some ways to go.
We do. Now, before I wrap this up, I know you're an attorney. Where do you specialize as far as being an attorney?
I do probate, elder law, estates tax and gift taxation, a little bit of criminal law, but primarily real estate, probate, and elder law.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, we call it estate planning. A lot of us are having homes and not realizing that if you go into a nursing home and you own a home, they could put a lien on your house. So a nursing home can cost anywhere between $3,000 to $10,000 a month.
True.
So they said, look to your left, look to your right. One of those two people will have a 50% chance going to a nursing home at one point in their life. We're living longer, and we have to realize estate planning is ways on you going into a nursing home and they can't attach your house. A lot of times, and it's a 5-year look-back period. So you have to transfer your house. Not saying transfer over to you will transfer over to your children or whoever you want it to be, but you still have control of your assets. And once 5 years pass, then the nursing home can't put a lien on your property, and then you have the generation wealth transfer. Also, with these reverse mortgages, they're the worst thing you can do because instead of it's like a credit card that you never pay off. And some people don't understand that. Is it compounded annually, or is it compounded over a 10-year or 15-year period? If it's like a credit card, that's 17-18% is just building. And so, and that's why we're seeing more of these reverse mortgages commercials on TV now, because it's another way to take advantage of people who don't know about the finances, about banking, about financial literacy. A lot of people don't know about financial. We're hard workers, but we don't know about financial literacy. No. You can say, "Oh, I'm going to charge you 5 points to sell your house for this mortgage." Like 5 points? Oh, that's okay. That's no problem. That's $50,000.
Right.
On $1 million house. On top of other fees they tacking on.
Right.
That you have to pay back over time. So financial literacy is something that we need to have, and we don't have enough of it right now. And that's why, as banking chair, I want to have more banking development districts. Like I had Park Slope in 3-block radius, 6 banks, and all of Brownsville, only 1 bank and a half. But we have more check cashing places. It's hard to find a check cashing place in more affluent neighborhoods, but more affluent neighborhoods. So that's something we have to look at also to make sure we have financial literacy and we have access to capital for our small business owners to thrive. And that's what we need to work on more diligently now.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Jesse Hamilton.
Thank you, Melanie. Always a pleasure.
Why don't you let them know where to find you, your social media or something, if maybe your law firm or where you're going to be at?
So right now we're transitioning. I'm not sure about the new hashtag, but you can always contact me via email at senatorbrooklyn@gmail.com. senatorbrooklyn@gmail.com. So make sure you email me, and we'll get right back to you. There are a lot of issues that are out there with personal injury, workers' compensation that are not being addressed. People are getting their homes taken away from them. And so I'm going to be being an activist, a community activist on the legal side. My training's in law, my passion is law, and I think the way we can get things done is not protesting, but taking people to court and making sure we get justice.
Amen. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate you.
Anytime, Melanie.
That's about BARTV.
Grinding. I'ma keep grinding. Climbing. I'ma keep climbing. Rise rising, rising, rising.